Can I ask now what that is?
Yeah, a cruller is basically what you'd refer to as like a glazed stick, but it's in like a twist. But it was one of the things that kind of started with dunks, like back when I was like really young.
Welcome back to the Top Shelf Outbound Leadership Podcast. Today we've got another amazing guest, Moira McGarghan, Director of Business Development at Memfault, has been leading SDRs for 10 years, onboarded and managed over 100 SDRs, and a super helpful topic that we're going to be diving into today, which is managing your sanity as an SDR leader. And I'm sure anyone tuning in can probably relate to needing help with that. So very excited to dive in, and thank you so much for joining. Great to have you.
Thanks, guys. I'm really excited to be here. I've been listening to you guys for a long time now, so really excited to be joining what is a really great cast of other fabulous guests.
Love that intro and appreciate you for being a longtime listener. As Joey always calls out, it's usually both your parents and your brother. Those might be our main repeat listeners, but now we'll add you to that bucket.
100%.
So yes, I have a very cold, delicious beverage right next to me that Joey's already sipping out of, and I would love to know what this is and why it's important to you.
Yeah, so we are currently enjoying a Dunka Latte from Dunkin' Donuts. I am a native New Englander, and what many people won't necessarily always know about this drink is that it was kind of like the spawn of a Dunkachino, which is no longer on their menu. But when I graduated from college, I was working in DC at a lobbying firm, and whenever I would feel like homesick or like very unsure of myself, I would use my like hard-earned $3 to go to the local Dunkin' Donuts and get like a Dunkachino just for a sip of home and to kind of correct where I was going. And so it's something that always reminds me of some of those times, and being able to just enjoy something warm or cold, and being able to have a sip of what is a uniquely New England drink. The Dunka Latte is now made with a coffee milk, which is unique to Rhode Island. But glad to see that it's made it out west.
Wow. I love it. It's nostalgic. It's new to me. I just learned a Dunkachino. That's also new to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Joey said, it's kind of like a milkshake. It's like liquid, delicious. And
I have zero complaints about this drink.
Nice. Well, I'm glad we've got some converts. Soon we'll get you guys hooked on some crullers for the truly uniquely Dunkies experience.
What can I ask now what that is?
Yeah, a cruller is basically what you'd refer to as like a glazed stick, but it's in like a twist. But it was one of the things that kind of started with dunks, like back when I was like really young. And so I think you can still get them today, but they are in most of like the New England donut shops around here.
Love donuts. So next time I go and get my Dunka Latte, I'll grab a cruller. Cool. Well, Maura, I appreciate you again being on here, and appreciate you mentioning that you are a longtime listener. Hopefully we ask some good questions and have a great conversation here. And to Joey's part, I think this is something that everybody, whether you're an SDR leader or not, it's probably important, but definitely interested to see some of your actionable takeaways for the people listening when it comes to this topic. So I'll dive in with the first question, right? A big part of staying afloat as an SDR leader is managing your own time and energy. A lot of times, days quickly get all over the place, and next thing you know, reps are bringing one-off issues. You have like pipeline concerns, tough conversations, a lot of things that feel super urgent in the moment. So what have you figured out about protecting your focus while still being available and supportive where your team works best for you?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think whenever we get these, slacks at 7 o'clock in the morning or like 6:15 at night, it can be really easy to try and just drop everything and answer, or like pull that really quick Salesforce report, or quickly like reach out to the AE to see what's up with the opportunity. But I think it's really about trying to make sure too that you are sticking to the boundaries that you have, especially if you also want to be setting the same example for your team. So especially, when you are otherwise like answering messages at like 9 p.m. Or again, trying to otherwise get some work done. I think it is really important just to make sure too that you are otherwise again setting the example that you'd want your team to see. Now, that's not to say that I haven't also been equally guilty of, again, responding to a Slack message on a Saturday. But I think it's also about like, what exactly are you seeing in front of you? Is this something that you think that can be quickly answered? Or is this something that says like, hey, that's a really good question. Tell you what, I'm going to be online in about 2 hours, and why don't we find some time then? So I think it's really about, establishing the boundaries that you have and making sure that you stick to them, because it's not just for you. You're also working with all these folks that have just recently entered the job market, who this is probably their first time ever having like access to Slack, or again, a manager that they're working with. So I think it's just important to make sure that you're also setting that example for them as well.
Nice. Absolutely. And one other thing you mentioned before the call that stuck out to me was you said, you're talking about figuring out how to manage a team full of sprinters when you are running a marathon.
Yeah.
And that definitely resonated. And I think is like a really good way to frame it and think about it. So can you expand on like how those differences kind of play out at work, as well as like what you've done to get the best out of that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, if we're doing our jobs correctly, our team members are leaving us in every like 2 years. And so I think it's really important to recognize that when we are hiring these really hungry, ambitious team members that we want to see sprint, I think it's just a really important thing to make sure that you're not otherwise getting caught up in the chaos of it all, to also see that you really need to be making sure that you're seeing a long-term strategic goal. Something that I've absolutely found myself really, almost kind of getting in a whirlwind on is that I find that, I'm also equally really invested in their growth and development. And so it can be really hard not to also keep at the same pace that they are of, trying to create the coaching plans and trying to, see if we can create some, promotion docs, or make sure that we can get out that call, advice and coaching. But at the same time, you also need to make sure too, that you can also really be investing in yourself. Because one of the things that I'm really proud of, and the things that I'm constantly advocating for my team, is to be finding the things that really inspire them, and to sign up for 30 Minutes to President's Clubs, like Patreon, or to be, trying to check out some, upcoming conferences. But how often are we actually doing that for ourselves, and making sure that we're also investing in that time to make sure that you yourself are also getting the enablement that you need. And so I think that the biggest thing for me, especially after 10 years of kind of, doing this, I think it's also just trying to make sure that you yourself are also really focusing on what it is that's important to you. I don't know if you guys can relate to, but I've also had like team members that in their second one-on-one with me ever, they're like, you know what, Maura, I'm really excited about this role. I know that I really want to be an SE. You're like, okay, that's amazing, and I love that for you, but we've got at least another 2 years before we're really talking about like moving up to the SE track. So while I do think that it's really exciting and awesome to see people really focused on what those next steps are for themselves, it's again just important to make sure too that, like, yes, we can again think really ahead and identify what those next steps are, but equally need to make sure that we're also pacing at a clip that is going to be manageable, not only for yourself but for the rest of your team.
Makes sense. Love that. You touched upon it just like a second ago, and it's the one thing that I truly think is the biggest struggle of this role is, and Joey and I were just talking about this earlier today, where it's like you never feel settled, because whether it's like revenue targets, it's targets in general, it's a new product, whatever it is. But more importantly than that, it's like your team, your people are always changing. And you said 2 to 2.5 years. I feel like that's maybe a little bit better than some cases. I know, again, Joe and I talk a lot about our past Chili Piper experiences together, but there was times where you'd hire somebody, this person's great, they're gone within like 6 or 9 months and they're promoted or whatever it may be, which makes it really, really tough. And so my main question to you is how, with the reality of like, if your team is doing a good job and you're doing a good job developing people, like they're going to be gone to promotions or maybe external attrition as well. Like, how have you learned to balance like celebrating the wins of people promoting and moving forward, while also like protecting the stability of your team and your own sanity, where you're feeling like you're constantly rebuilding? Like, is it just a mindset? Is there specific things that you've done to assure that, you're not feeling like I'm having, this team just kill it, leave immediately, and now I feel like I'm always resetting?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that also you want to hope that you're not trying to reset every single time someone leaves, right? I think it really comes down to building out some really strong foundations with onboarding so that when, yeah, if you have somebody that ultimately leaves for a stellar opportunity elsewhere, or if somebody gets promoted onto another team without, again, like a ton of preparation, I think it's really, again, fundamental that you also have a strong building blocks for both like onboarding and offboarding so that again when somebody does leave maybe more unexpectedly that you have the patches that can otherwise be like again quote unquote like babysat on until somebody else is able to come on and take over. But I do think it's important to also make sure that you celebrate when people are also moving off the team. I think as BD managers, what we want is the best for our team members, right? Like we hire them because we really believe in them and want them to, again, identify what the next best step for them is, whether that's, again, becoming an AE on your team or elsewhere or, any other area of the business. And so I know that those conversations can be really tough, right? When somebody like comes on and be like, oh, like, I'm really sorry, but I think I'm going to be moving on to another opportunity. The first thing I would say is like, I'm so proud of you. That's really exciting. I mean, obviously like there's a million other like cogs in your head being like, okay, so I need to reach out to HR and I need to try and figure out like who's going to cover like the West Coast patch. But at the same time, those are things to be celebrated. And I think that we want to make sure that that is also, again, like the last thing that you should be worrying about is like, how am I going to make sure that I'm again establishing a strong onboarding like program or an offboarding program to get there. I know that you've had a couple of conversations around like onboarding, so I won't get too much into that. But I know that the things that have really worked well for us has been like an ongoing like calendar blocks that are always like again like the different fundamental things that people need to be learning at any given time. And I basically just use Claude to like recreate those like different like trainings that we have, just so that again it's not like a huge headache every single time you need to bring somebody on. And having a bench really helps.
Nice. Yeah, 100%. I think like it's like the worst and hardest part of the job, like Matt said, but it's also like the best and most worth celebrating part of the job is like seeing someone day one, seeing them figure it out, and then seeing them crush it and prove their way to a promotion. Where you just kind of get to sit back and watch it happen.
Right.
Another thing you talked about before the call was the challenges of having a we mindset in your one-on-ones instead of a you mindset. Can you like expand on that? And I guess like what have you seen particularly not work that has kind of led you to this shift?
Yes. So I will say that I started working within like tech sales at a startup. So there was very much like we've got this, like we're all in it, flat structure, very much like we, us mindset. I was also a captain of a field hockey team. So it was constantly like, we've got this, like we can do it. Same thing. I was an RA and it was constantly trying to bring and like build communities together. Now, it's not to say that you don't want to build a community in a really strong and supportive group. I'm really proud of the group that I have and have always coached. I think I've been really fortunate to have some team members that are immensely proud and supportive of one another. However, when I'm going through our one-on-one docs and leading sessions as a team, I'm very guilty of using all right, so what we need to do is we need to set at least like 7 more meetings before the end of the week, or in a one-on-one doc being like, all right, Bonnie, like you really like, or we really need to make about like 70 more calls before the end of the day. And just realizing that Maura, is not making 70 more dials. Like I can maybe help like with a celeb dial here and there. But at the end of the day, like it's going to be on Bonnie or it's going to be on my team members to ultimately be like setting and entering those meetings into Salesforce. So I really learned that a lot from a sales training with a manager focus, because that was something that they were hearing a lot in some of my meetings, where again, yes, like you can be supportive and really emblematic of your team, but you need to make sure that it is very clear that they are the ones that are going to be doing that work and not you. So that was just something that I find myself doing a lot still, and I need to constantly be correcting myself just to make sure too that I can still be a very supportive manager, but I again need to be mindful of again making it very clear about where the action is coming from.
1,000%. I know you mentioned like the idea of like managing up, which I think again is like one of the best skill sets you can coach and teach people. And I would always try to do something similar of like, I'm showing up to one-on-ones, if you have 10 people on your team, like I don't want to do 10 setups for these one-on-ones. I want you to come with your issues, roadblocks, whatever else that I can like help support you. And so like, how is there a specific like formula or framework or something that you give your team that allows them to feel like they really do own their one-on-ones? And I'm curious, like, what that sort of looks like on your rep side.
Yeah. Well, I think in all of like the one-on-one docs, I use like Google Docs, and I otherwise have like a tracker, which is really helpful just because it's also really great to see team members go from like their first, couple weeks to then like later on where you can kind of see a lot of the adjustments or where the feedback is coming from. And so that's actually been a really helpful tool this entire time. But we always have, again, like specific directives after a call to know, again, like what exactly are the things that are going to be happening. Because I think it's really important with sales to know that, again, like you eat what you kill, right? And like you need to make sure too that like if you are on the path to become an AE or any contributor at the business, you need to make sure too that you're being held accountable for the things that you're doing. Sometimes I get the feedback that BD teams can be almost like a bit like nurturing or like soft, because again, like we are otherwise trying to like, again, model again, like what people are going to be doing in like the greater like corporate space. But I think what is really unique to the BD role is that there is so much that you need to learn. And again, you're just, again, like ducking punches every single day to make sure too that you can like continue to be doing what you're doing. And so I think it's important to recognize that, yes, there are things that are in your control and then a lot of things that aren't. So it's really important that you are able to, again, make the dials, send out the emails, connect with the folks on LinkedIn, identify the personalization, because those are within your control and not a whole lot else is. And so it's just, again, knowing too, like what those components are.
Got it. Okay, cool. Love that. Sweet. The other thing that you touched upon, and I, again, from like the context of this podcast, Joey and I are like, it feels like sales dev leaders sort of get the like short end of the stick. There's so much stuff out there for AEs and like sales reps. There's a good chunk of stuff out there for SDRs. There's a lot for VPs of sales and sales leaders, and there's like nothing for sales dev leaders. It felt like for a very long time. You mentioned like how much a community matters. And, as far as like people who are listening today, feeling maybe isolated or again, like trying to check their own sanity for whether it's venting or it's education or whatever it may be. If you were to tell someone like this week, don't feel alone, here's stuff that's really worked for me, whether it's specific communities, it's dinner events, it's Slack groups, maybe a mentor that you grabbed, like what would you say has been the most impactful for you as far as like, feeling like you're part of a community?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been really awesome to see just how much the BD, like management director, VP levels have actually really grown since the BD role became a really like large thing in like the mid to early like 2010s. I think had I like known this maybe like 9 years ago, I probably would have saved myself a lot of like exhaust crying and like burnout, because like when I was first putting together a BD team, I was at a startup. We had never had an outbound function before, and I was working really hard and like really again exceeded my numbers. So when they were looking to start an outbound team, they asked me to help take over. And so as a team of myself, again, I was trying to hire people, develop a curriculum, again, really get some coaching, and then perform and hit our number. It was really hard to try and again figure out what that was. And I was also again on what seemed like an island, right? When, sales leaders otherwise had like usually other managers, and marketing teams had, other people that they were working with, and sales ops themselves also usually had like maybe another person, but it was kind of hard to otherwise feel like you had somebody that could really relate to what your experience was of, nurturing new talent and being able to, again, really hit the outbound targets when, again, we were also still figuring out what our market was. And so that was really tough in like, basically from 2015 through like 2019 or so, that when I actually joined a company where I was like one of other managers and we had a director, it was like a huge breath of relief of like being able to bounce ideas off or be like, is this crazy? Am I crazy? Like, what is happening? So just knowing too that, again, being able to bounce those ideas off so that now that I'm in another place where, again, I am this old BD leader, I do feel like I have a support system, one, because I've made a lot of really great mentors along the way, which has been really great. But there are so many really fundamental groups that I'm a part of and have been lucky enough to join. You actually had Dave Wilkins on a couple episodes ago too. And he and Dale Thorne have otherwise started the SDR Leaders of America group. If you aren't already part of that Slack channel, definitely join. A lot of really great conversations happening there. SDR Leader with Sam Nelson is also really great. They host the Pipeline event which it just brings together a ton of people from the industry. BDR leaders, BDR Coffee Chat also used to have, or still does have, like a weekly meeting that they do every other Friday, and they used to actually have like one-on-one chats, which was also really great, just to meet other really great people. And then also just like the networking events that you sometimes get added to. Again, I know that's really easy just to kind of like pass on like just like the random downtown like steakhouse dinner, but I've actually met some really great people in my time there. And one of the women that I met there, she and I realized that we were almost like at like rival cybersecurity companies. That what was really cool was that once like first of all, like we just really related on like the industry and what the objections our team was getting, but we ended up just becoming pretty good friends. And then we actually ended up having our teams like actually host like a kickball game against each other. This was like 2001, so it was kind of COVID-ish. So we like just met out in South Boston at like M Street Beach, and like we just had the teams otherwise do like a kickball game together. But I would have done that if I hadn't taken that opportunity to network. And it was also really great because I saw my team members learning how to network in a time where like that was not happening. It's been really beneficial for me to at least feel like I have a sounding board and to be able to be really inspired by a lot of other really great leaders. This podcast is also one of them, but I know that I'm a huge fan of like listening to a lot of different sales content, audiobooks, social psychology things, just to be able to truly get some like different ideas about just the BD landscape or just sales at large. And again, there's so many different tools out there that, again, happy to share any resources that I might have. And I guess putting it out there that if anybody wants to ever like also bounce ideas off of, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Happy to also, again, share any advice that I may or may not have.
Oh yeah. I'll stamp approve that. I recommend it. It's a great hang.
Yes.
I think like SDR and sales leadership definitely attracts people who tend to like care a lot about the success of their team, and sometimes maybe like unhealthily so, where it can kind of like cross the line of being not like productive and healthy. So how do you personally know when you've crossed that line from like being invested in your team's success to letting the job like consume you? And have you developed any rituals or boundaries that have helped you kind of mentally disconnect before you get to that point?
Oh, yeah, Joey, I'm still learning that. So open to any suggestions. But yeah, I guess a couple of things for that. Admittedly, I had kids, and that also really allowed for a big separation, just because, again, I was no stranger to like working nights, weekends, holidays to try and like be pulling the Salesforce report or scraping cold call data or listening to gong calls that, again, having kids again, and just kind of shifts your priorities a little bit, but people don't need to have babies in order to figure that out. I promise. Therapy is also great. But outside of that, I think the biggest things that have been really helpful for me is that, I guess, speaking for myself, I graduated in like 2011 when it was like all about like boss babe, like girl boss era with like a ton of like just like hustle culture, right? And so I am really proud of the work that I do, and I think that if you're subscribed to this podcast and like listening to this right now, you probably are too. And like, again, you take your job really seriously, and it's hard not to. And so I think it's really important to also recognize, again, when you are almost like redefining yourself as your job. And again, I am fully very guilty of this, and that like being a business development director at a tech startup, it allows me to be a multi-hyphenated person with importance. But I think it's really about trying to step back, about, again, realizing like where your priorities are. So one of the things that has been helpful is that, yes, I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I really like listening to different audiobooks that really like dig deeper on sales psychology. But I do think that trying to then break that up with like a Bravo Housewives recap is also really just beneficial for my own sanity, or being able to, again, commute into the office with, again, like a sales podcast, but then commute out with like an audiobook has also been helpful. One of the things too, especially when I'm finding that I'm just, again, feeling like I'm really taking on a lot because it just feels easier to control things than to like let it go, is I have a couple of things that have been helpful, whether it be like creating almost like chair positions for some of my senior team members that just genuinely want more exposure and more responsibility. I hate writing sequences. It's not something that brings me joy. I find it like really tedious, but I have Hazel, who really liked being able to put together some content and really liked the interest of like figuring out like what happens if we use the word because instead instead of since, and like being able to do stuff with that. Same thing with like, I had Derek, who's really interested in being able to connect with the product team and help like bring on some of our engineers to run enablement sessions, or Roisin, who is really good at developing like different like social things for us to do as a team to, again, like organize like a night out or anything else. So being able to know too that I had team members that actively wanted to help, and being able to offload that with this kind of like almost, I don't know, like mini team lead position was really helpful. Other things that were also really great is that I know for me, like just listening to cold calls and trying to give call coaching is one of the things that I always just wish I had like 25 hours in a day to do. But something that I found that was really beneficial was that I actually would pair up team members with the highest and lowest call conversion rate. Again, it was just a report I would usually pull through like outreach, or if you don't have outreach, just being able to even just do it by, again, call data, and pairing those folks up and letting them run for about like a month and a half, or like depending on the quarter, what have you. And then just seeing who moved up the most, or again, just kind of seeing what the difference was. And that was something that was really great. I would see team members just like breaking off to like go into conference rooms to make the calls together, or sending the call links to one another to see if they could get some advice. And when ultimately we were able to kind of like see like, hey, like who won, seeing that Luke and Hannah like ultimately like were able to be the top winners. They got to each bring a +1 out to dinner, and they all like ended up having a lovely time. Again, it really helped me, making sure too that, again, like I wasn't the only person that they were really relying on for call advice. And it ultimately was a really great experience for folks on the team to realize that their best resource was each other, and being able to get some of that advice.
I love that. I know you'd written about that, like letting your team take certain tasks. And we had a leadership training at Hi Bob 7 or 8 months ago. And I said that after the leadership training, like it was one of the best sort of skills that I had learned, because I always struggled with like delegation. And to your point, like it does consume you after a while. If you're always the one building the sequence, always building the call script, always doing this, it's like months, years of that add up and you're just beat. And so I love that you do that. And I think, again, the way that they had framed it, which I loved, was like, you feel like you need to do it because you want it done a certain way, and it needs to be like, good, or whatever the word that you want to use, from like yourself and the expectations that you set, but you're really holding your team back when a lot of them want these opportunities. And like, you shouldn't look at it like I'm throwing work on someone's plate. You should look at it like I'm giving somebody the chance to do something that they're really excited about. Granted, they are excited about it. And obviously, like you mentioned specific examples, it sounds like they are. But I love that. And I think that's really a great way to, again, get a little bit of work off your plate, but let other people grow and learn. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I have one last sort of professional question, and then we'll leave Joey for the personal one that we end every episode with. But for my side, this is a newer one. We just, I think, started it 2 podcasts ago, maybe 1. I'm not totally sure, but very new. And that is like, what is your most like polarizing SDR leader take? Something that you think is just like, maybe a lot of people disagree with, or again, it's just polarizing in general. Would love to hear what it is and why.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's not too polarizing, but I think it's really important to admit when you're wrong, or like when you have messed up. So I think one of the things that I try to do every time we have a QBR, obviously like the team members all do theirs and they present on them on a quarterly basis, but I also have one of like where I've fallen short, or where I've not hit goals, or where I've genuinely like made mistakes. And so I think that at some point, especially when you're first starting out at a new company, like if you've just, again, taken on a new management role, or even if you've been at a company for like a long time, I think it's really important to recognize, again, like, hey, like this is where I made the wrong choice, or, we really need to pivot from, because that was not the right call. I think it is a really important thing to do, because I think you're also then modeling that, again, that it's important to not only recognize your mistakes, but then learn from them, because that's, again, one of the biggest things that can really help to propel the organization forward. So I hope that's not like groundbreaking for anybody, but I know that sometimes it can be really hard to, again, appear vulnerable, or then that you don't have all the answers. But I think it's really important to also recognize that we only learn by growing. And so I think that's an important thing to model to the rest of your team members as well.
Yeah, that's great.
100%. And as a longtime listener, you might be ready for this one, but outside of work, what is one thing you would like to accomplish in your lifetime?
Nice. Yeah. So I was thinking about this. And so I think like the kind of baseline is that I just want to like not raise assholes. I guess like I have two boys and I think they're really awesome. And I hope that other people do too. But I just want to like, I want to raise kind kids, and that's again pretty fundamental. But I suppose if we're looking for something that's a little bit like outside of just that, I would really love to run a marathon. Again, I have a little bit more training that I would need to do to get there. I think you had another guest on who like ran like a marathon with like 14 beers or something.
I'm still, I have talked about that in every social situation I've been in for the last month and a half. It is, I'm not over it. It's so crazy.
We have the Boston beer mile where you chug a beer every like quarter mile. I'm not there yet either, but like, but I think I would love to run at least a consecutive like 26.2 miles, maybe with or without beer, at some point. So that would probably be the one thing that I would want to achieve.
Heck yeah. And your non-asshole kids will be there cheering for you on the sideline.
They've already been to a couple of the 5 and 10Ks, but yeah, hopefully they'll be able to be patient enough for what would likely be probably like almost a 4.5 hour race too.
Nice. Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much for everything you just gave to us in this time. So helpful. Yeah, it was great chatting. And thank you so much to everyone who listened and tuned in, such as Moira and everyone else we don't know is listening. We'll see you next time.